ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So as Kardama Muni had foretold Mother Devahuti that very soon the Lord will appear as her son. So here we find the description is given. Tasyam bahutithe kale. After many years, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Madhusudanaha, who is the killer of the demon like Madhu, Kardamam, being very affectionate because of his devotional service, he appeared, Kardamam Viryam, in the simon of Kardama Muni, Apanno. He took shelter, he entered. Jagne Agnir Iva Daruni. And it can be explained just like Agni is present everywhere and then it become ignited in the sacrifice, even though it is everywhere. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is present everywhere, but according to his independent desire, the Lord may appear wherever he likes. So in this case, he appeared in the simon of his devotee. That is what is being said here. So, in the purport, Prabhupada has explained very nicely that it is very clear from this verse, even though it looks like the Lord took shelter of simon of Kardama Muni, just like a living entity also takes shelter of a simon to take birth. When a living entity comes in this material world, he has to take shelter of the simon of the father. And then the living entity, through the simon of the father, enters into the womb of the mother. And the mother becomes impregnated with the living entity. And then, over a period of time, the living entity comes out taking birth, getting the body from the mother. So here, it is also said, similarly, the Supreme Lord took shelter in the simon of Kardama Muni. But then it is clarified who took shelter? Bhagavan Madhusudanaha, the Supreme Lord, who is the killer of demons like, who is not ordinary. That Madhusudana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the killer of Madhu, he took shelter. So, it is very clearly explained here that the Supreme Lord is always the Supreme Lord. He is always called Bhagavan. He is always called by the name like Madhusudana. So that Supreme Personality of Godhead, he took shelter in the simon of Kardama Muni. Now that logic is explained here very nicely. Fire is actually present everywhere. But when we ignite fire, then it looks like it comes out from the wood. But actually, fire is not born from the wood. Jagne agnir iva daruni. Just as fire comes from wood in a sacrifice. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, He is actually present everywhere. And independently, the Supreme Lord may desire to appear from anywhere He likes. In this case, the Supreme Lord desired to enter into the semen of Kardama Muni. In ordinary case, the living entity has no freedom to enter wherever he wants. Even if we try to understand how, apart from being mentioned, it is the Supreme Lord who entered, he is Madhusudana, and he appeared just like, there are three things mentioned. He is Bhagavan, Madhusudana, and the logic is given. He entered the womb of Devahuti through the semen of Kardama Muni, just like fire, even though present everywhere, appears from the wood in sacrifice. Isn't it? So similarly, the Supreme Lord entered. The difference is, we are forced to enter under the material energy, under the influence of Maya. We have no freedom where to take birth. But the Supreme Lord, He is completely independent. Second thing which is mentioned here by the word Kardamam Viryam. The Lord did not agree to enter into virya of any ordinary man. Out of affection for His devotee, He entered into the semen of Kardama Muni. And then through the semen of Kardama Muni, He entered into the womb of Devahuti. So from this also we can understand that actually it is not an ordinary birth. We are forced, the Supreme Lord independently, according to His own will, according to His own desire, out of affection for Kardama Muni, because of his devotional service, the Lord planned to enter. Now Prabhupada is giving a very interesting logic in the purport. Prabhupada is explaining, it is actually up to the Supreme Lord. Sometimes, just like here, out of affection, the Lord entered in the semen of Kardama Muni and came out from the womb of Devahuti. In the case of Prahlad Maharaj's devotion, out of affection for Prahlad Maharaj, when he was asked by Hiranyakashipu, is your Lord in this pillar? And then Prahlad Maharaj said, yes, my Lord is everywhere. He is in this pillar also. So Bhagavatam says, Satyam Vidhatum, in order to prove the words of his pure devotee Prahlad, that yes, the Supreme Lord is present everywhere. He is present even in this pillar. The Supreme Lord came out from the pillar. Now that does not mean the pillar is the origin of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, that does not mean the Supreme Kardama Muni's semen is the origin of the Supreme Lord, or Devahuti's womb is the origin of the Supreme Lord. Generally, just like we find when the Supreme Lord appeared personally as Krishna, first he appeared in the heart of Vasudeva. And then from the heart of Vasudeva, he was transferred to the womb of Devaki. But here in this case, the Lord decided, no, I will not enter into the heart of Kardama Muni, I will enter into the semen of Kardama Muni. It is his independent desire. So he can come out from the heart, he can come out from the pillar, or he can even come out from the nostrils of Brahma, another devotee of the Lord. When Brahmaji was bewildered, he was busy in his creative work. He was doing the creation. Suddenly he saw that earth is getting submerged in the ocean. So he did not know what to do. So then, to safeguard his creation, the Supreme Lord immediately came out from the nostril of Brahma. And he appeared just like a small thumb, just like a size of a small thumb from the nostril. And then, it was in the form of a Varaha. And then the Supreme Lord went to the sky and assumed a very gigantic form, like a huge mountain, like a huge elephant. And then Brahma is also bewildered. What is this living entity which has come out from my nostril and it has taken such a huge form? He is also not aware. And then they are discussing with, Brahmaji is discussing with other devatas that what is this living entity? And then the Supreme Lord, of course, Brahma then wondered mostly to the Supreme Lord himself. And then to confirm that, the Supreme Lord roared from the sky, confirming what Brahma is saying, that it is the Supreme Lord. So he may come out from the nostrils of Brahma. It is up to the Supreme Lord from where he wants to come out. He is present everywhere. And that is why in Bhagavad Gita, it is very clearly mentioned, Janma karma cha me divyam. When the Supreme Lord appears, his janma, his activities, everything is transcendental. It is not under the purview of this material world. It is not under the purview of material activities. It is not a material birth. It is completely transcendental. And if we can understand that properly, the result of that is, after giving up this material body, we become liberated from this material world. We go back to Krishna. In Bhagavatam, it is very nicely explained about what is the result of understanding Krishna Katha, hearing about Krishna, talking about Krishna, inquiring about Krishna. What is the result? Just like Krishna is saying, Janma karma cha me divyam, it is all transcendental. Evam yovetti tatvataha, if somebody understands them in truth. So similarly, Bhagavatam explains. In the 10th canto, before explaining about the personal appearance of the Supreme Lord in the heart of Vasudeva and then through the womb of Devaki, it is explained, Vasudeve katha prashnaha purusham strin punatihi. When one hears Vasudeva katha prashnaha, when one inquires about Supreme Lord Krishna or Krishna Katha, then from that inquiry, three kinds of people become purified completely. Purusham strin punatihi. Vaktaram, the speaker, one who talks about, one who elaborates about Krishna Katha, Vaktaram. Prachakam, one who inquires about the Supreme Lord. shrotrams, and other general populace who hear about this discussion. One who inquires, one who speaks about, and others who hear about. All three of them become purified. How? Tat pad salilam yatha. Just like Mother Ganges, which emanates from the lotus feet of the Lord, purifies the three worlds, upper, middle, lower. Similarly, three kinds of people: inquirer, one who talks about, describes, and anyone who hears about, all of them become purified. So in Bhagavad Gita, this transcendental mystery of birth of the Lord, this transcendental mystery about that the Lord sometimes acts like an ordinary human being. Here we are seeing, like an ordinary human being, he has entered into the semen of Kardama Muni. Not only this, the Supreme Lord sometimes acted just like a friend of Arjuna. Isn't it? He acted like that. Many different kinds of pastime the Supreme Lord had with Pandavas. It looked like just like an ordinary human being. So, in Bhagavad Gita, this mystery of the Supreme Lord acting like human being, appearing like human being, is mystified very nicely in the 9th chapter. So in the 9th chapter, which is called the most confidential part of the knowledge which Krishna has given, in the 11th verse and in the purport, Prabhupada explains the import, very beautiful purport about this whole chapter. Avajananti mama mudha manushim tanumashhritaha param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. Manushim tanumashrita. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Just like here also, if you see, even though the Supreme Lord appeared in the Virya of Kardama, it is mentioned Bhagavan, it is mentioned Madhusudana, so that we don't mistake that he has entered just like an ordinary human being. Similarly, when Krishna is saying, I descend in this material world, and when I descend in human-like form, people deride me, thinking I am ordinary. They do not understand my param bhavam ajananto. They do not understand my transcendental nature. They do not understand that actually I am the supreme over everything that be. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains this very nicely. From the other explanations of the previous verse in this chapter, it is clear that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although appearing like a human being, is not a common man. This is very important. Other verses are given before this. From that, here the Lord is saying, when I appear like a human being, in a human-like form, people deride me. But then the Lord has given preamble to that. In the previous verses, the Lord has described something very uncommon about him. Some opulences which is not possible for a common human being. So this is very interesting. Prabhupada is explaining. From the other explanations of the previous verses in this chapter, it is clear Although appearing like a human being, he is not a common man. So what are those verses? Let us try to see. What did Krishna say? Okay. So Krishna began with Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina madsthani sarva bhutani na chaham teshu avasthitaha. Krishna is saying, see my opulence. By me, in my unmanifested form, entire universe is pervaded. Krishna is saying, I pervade personally in my another form, which is unmanifested. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. In my avyakta form, in my unmanifested form, I pervade the entire universe. And then, matsthani sarva bhutani. All beings are in me. Can a common man say, all living entities are inside me? I pervade this entire world in my form. Supreme Lord is saying, in my unmanifested form, I pervade, and all living entities are within me. Matsthani sarva bhutani, but I am not in them. Everybody is in me, but I am not in them. That means I am aloof. But then in the next verse, Krishna says something different, more inconceivable. Krishna says, Nacha matsthani bhutani pashyame yogameshwaram bhuta bhrin nacha bhutastho mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. And yet, everything that is created does not rest in me. Everything is in me, Krishna said before. And now Krishna is saying everything is not in me. See my Yogeshwarya. You see, I am the maintainer of living entities. And although I am everywhere, still myself is the very source of creation. And then, in the next, Krishna says, as the mighty wind blowing everywhere always rests in ethereal space, know that in the same manner all living beings rest in me. So all creation, everything actually rests on the Supreme Lord. And then, O son of Kunti, at the end of millennium, every material manifestation enters into my nature. And when this whole material universe is gone, it goes where? It comes back to me. It rests in me. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I again create. And again, by my energy, again I do the creation. Then in the next, Krishna says, the whole cosmic order is under me. By my will, it is again and again manifested, and by my will, it is annihilated at the end. Whole cosmic manifestation is again and again appearing, again and again dissolving, all by the will of the Supreme Lord. And then something more Krishna says, Nachamam tani karmani nibadhanti dhananjaya udasina vadasinam asaktam teshu karmasu. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached, seated as though neutral. So it's not that, like a common man, we are also doing some kind of creation. We create a house, we create children, we create wealth, right? But we all become implicated in our actions. But the Supreme Lord is saying, I am never implicated. This work does not bind me. He is not bound by any karma. And the Supreme Lord, Udasino, he is not very inclined about this material world, not very interested. Udasinavat. Just like how much we are inclined to enjoy this material world, it's not that the Supreme Lord is inclined about this material world. He's not inclined. And then that famous shloka, Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving being. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So the whole material energy which is manifesting and which is again dissolving, it is all working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And then Krishna is saying, Avajananti mama mudha manushim tanumashrita. This param bhavam, this nature of the Supreme Lord, that material energy is completely under control of the Supreme Lord, ajananto, they do not understand. And that is why they deride me. They think like a common man. So the Supreme Lord, when he appeared, that is why sometimes even though the Supreme Lord did not want to interrupt the relationship with Aishwarya Bhav, with his devotees in Vrindavan, but still sometimes the Lord manifested his potencies. The Lord killed Putana, Trinavrata, showed universal form in his mouth to Mother Yashoda, and she was bewildered. And then again the Lord covered her so that she should not lose that maternal affection which she is having. Krishna lifted Govardhan hill with his small finger, isn't it? All superhuman activities the Lord performed. Even though he appeared just like simple human being. Same thing is mentioned in Bhagavatam also. Very nicely Prabhupada, in this purport, Prabhupada describes this. So, the personality of Godhead who conducts creation, maintenance and annihilation of complete cosmic manifestation cannot be a human being. We saw this. Maya Dhyakshena and all Prakriti, everything Krishna is saying, it is created by me, resting in me. One who does that, how he can be a common human being? Yet there are many foolish men who consider Krishna to be merely a powerful man and nothing more. Actually, he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvaraha, Parama, Krishna. Right? That is what it is explained in Brahma Samhita. Then, as it is explained in Bhagavatam, very nicely Prabhupada explains from Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada says, there are many controversies amongst the impersonalist and personalist about the Lord's appearance as a human being. But if we consult Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the authoritative text for understanding the science of Krishna, then we can understand Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not an ordinary man. Although he appeared on this earth as ordinary human, he appeared like an ordinary human. In Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, when the sages inquired about the activities of Krishna, it is stated that his appearance as a man bewilders the foolish. No human being could perform the wonderful acts that Krishna performed while he was present on this earth. When Krishna appeared before his father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, he appeared with 4 hands. But after the prayers of the parent, he transformed himself into an ordinary child. His appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. This is very important. His appearance as an ordinary human being is one of the features of his transcendental body. The Lord appears just like an ordinary human being. 2 hands, 2 legs, everything. That is the feature of his transcendental body. In the 11th chapter of the Gita, also it is stated, Teneva Rupena. Arjuna prayed to see again that form of 4 hands. And when Krishna was thus petitioned by Arjuna, he again assumed his original form. All these different features of Supreme Lord are certainly not those of an ordinary human being. So actually we can understand. The Lord is completely independent, and here we find out of his love and affection for his devotees Kardama and Devahuti, the Lord decided to appear from the semen of Kardama Muni into the womb of Devahuti. And that science is being explained here. So we'll stop with this. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Today is Srila Prabhupada's Diksha Divas. So